Jack, are you a candidate or are you just
I'm thinking about running. No. Yeah.
He spills coffee and everybody's saying that.
Nobody sits around me since I.
You give them the title.
I know.
Maybe Monty will show up to have somebody to sit.
Good morning. My name is Doug Lawrence. I'm the current chairperson of the Community Affairs for the Missoula Chamber. Excuse me. I'll introduce the head table today. Ward 1, we have Justin Armintrout, Jason Wiener. From Ward 2, Don Nicholson, Pam Walzer. And from Ward 3, Doug Harrison and Stacy Rye. A little bit about the format. I will present some questions to the candidates. They'll have a couple minutes to introduce themselves. I'll present the question. We'll go through each question. They'll answer it. We have a timer. Nicole over there will time everything. We need down to 30 seconds. She'll wave a little wand to let you know that we're trying to get this accomplished through the hour and a half that we have this morning. At the end, you have some follow-up questions and a final comment. Okay? We will entertain some questions from everybody. We'll kind of do that at the end so we can get through all the questions that we have. We also have put in front of you a rating form. There's an introduction to that form on there. We ask you to help us evaluate their position on the goals of the chamber, and those are mentioned on there also. Okay, so let's start with Justin. If you'd like to introduce yourself.
Great, thank you. My name is Justin Armintrout, and I am in Ward 1. I live in the central Rattlesnake. I first came to Missoula in '94 at the age of 18 to attend the university. Worked my way through college, actually working for Gilbert Milliken, who passed away about 4 years ago, but he owned Showcase Video, and then he was also kind of a philanthropist in town. But I worked actually my way through college working for him, specifically working in his garden at his home in the Rattlesnake. So he certainly taught me his love for gardening, which still continues today. After college, I started working for the Missoulian as a circulation district manager. The Rattlesnake was part of my my territory. Worked there for 9 years and decided that circulation was not my calling. So I left and headed off to Seattle, where actually for the last 9 years, well, I should say 8 years, I worked as an executive recruiter. And a year ago, I left to come back to Missoula, which is something I had wanted to do all along, to start my own executive recruiting search firm. So I recruit nationally in the consumer products industry, specifically in toys, hardware, housewares, and consumer electronics. And I recruit the salespeople who sell those products to large national retail chains. I'm also a licensed real estate agent in the state of Montana. And I certainly have been involved with a number of organizations, everything from the Human Rights Campaign to the Missoula Organization of Realtors, and then also the Western Montana Gay and Lesbian Community Center.
Thank you. Jason?
Thank you. Well, it seems to me that one of the most important things that the government can do, particularly at the municipal level, is connect the details of what they do for their business each day with the values that we hold in the community. My work experience includes time spent as an analyst at an investment banking firm. I studied economics when I was an undergraduate, and also time as a teacher and a journalist. I taught English composition at the University of Montana, and have been on the staff of the Missoula Independent, and am currently still working for them as a freelancer. So really, much of my life has been about bridging this idea that there are empirical facts and details about the world that need to be brought together with people's values, that we need to express what we believe and what we build. And that's really why I'm here, is that I think that that's a perspective that needs to be brought to every decision that the council makes, and it's something that needs to be actively sought out from the community as well. What do we value, and how are we going to express that in what we build in our streets, in our neighborhoods, in our parks, and in our commercial centers. So that's why I'm here. It's a little bit about who I am. Thanks for your time.
Thank you. Don?
I'm Don Nicholson. Contrary to Justin, I came here 60 years earlier in 1934. So I've been here a long time. Born and raised in Missoula, went through schools here, graduated with a BA in chemistry, spent a couple years in the Army, most of that time in Korea, And then for 42 years, I had a career in the pulp and paper industry. Among other things, managing paper mills in Oregon, Kentucky, and Connecticut. For 10 years, kind of a sidebar career in the machinery business that makes paper, the machinery that in turn makes paper, and was a corporate purchasing manager worldwide in that corporation, and was vice president of the Canadian division and president of the Brazilian division. So I have a broad business background in big business, but I like Missoula, so in 2000 I retired from all of that, came back here and been active through the years in the University of Montana Alumni Affairs. I've been its president. I headed up the effort to build the Hall of Fame. I have a small business that fixes dents in cars, and that's been satisfying to have something to do so my wife doesn't have to tell me, don't you have to play golf today? Because she knows how to run the house. Anyway, we have 8 children, 14 grandchildren, spend a lot of time with activities with kids and visiting things, and my involvement in the city council is for 2 reasons really. I think it's important work. A lot of people ask me, are you having fun on the city council? This isn't a fun deal. This is hard work. It takes 20 to 25 hours a week to do it right, as far as I'm concerned. It gives me something to do, and it keeps me involved in something that I think is not fun, but it really is important. Thank you.
Thank you.
And my name is Pam Walzer, and I have a very varied past, similar to Don in a way. Though I'm not born and raised here in Missoula, I came here in 1999. I was born and raised in Cleveland and Pittsburgh, and I earned my biology degree and chemistry minor in Western Pennsylvania, went on to graduate school in West Virginia University in biochemical genetics, and moved west and never looked back in 1980. I've worked in research and quality testing laboratories for over 10 years, and then moved into the hazardous waste management business and worked with different military industrial complex companies making rockets and testing, and then dealing with the hazardous waste and all the waste coming out of rocket manufacturing, and even moving into chemical weapons destruction and dealing with all the waste coming out of there. So I've got unusual past, and decided that after 20 years of that, it was time to slow down. And I had loved Missoula. I've been visiting here for quite some time with friends, and visiting friends here. That was just a wonderful place to live. So I chose Missoula to reinvent myself and slow down. Well, I guess you just can't change, and I'm not slowing down. I decided to get more and more involved in the community. I have earned my teaching certification for teaching science here in Missoula. Unfortunately, everybody wants to be a science teacher in Missoula, so I've been innovative. I now make jewelry, manufacture jewelry for a local craft artist, and believe it or not, you can earn a living doing that. And so that's my primary income, and I believe in giving back to the community and volunteering throughout the community, and there's no better service than to serve your people and your government by actually participating and being on city council. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Doug Harrison. I have my wife Rosemary, and I've been married for 32 years, something like that. We've lived in Missoula. Oh my. No, we've lived in Missoula for the last 25 years, since 1982. My wife grew up on the same street we live on right now. I've lived in the ward for that period of time. I have 2 children. My son's finishing up his education degree, student teaching at CS Porter right now. My daughter's in her junior year at the University of Montana, and she'll be studying law. Which brings me really to the reason I'm running. The reason I'm running is I love this community. We've raised our kids here. They've gone to the schools here. They've had an excellent education. The community's been absolutely fantastic. I served on the city council from 1986 through December of 1997 for those 12 years. And during those 12 years, I was on numerous committees and subcommittees. I served as a council representative on the health board. I was the council representative on the original growth management task force, and I was the president of the city council for a couple of years. During my tenure on the council, many of the aspects that we enjoy about Missoula today were put into place. The Riverfront Park system was developed, and that includes Karis Park, where Out to Lunch is right now, where that's held right now. The acquisition of the easements for the trail systems, that's where that all started during that time period. Partnership Health Center was initiated then, and the West Reserve Street corridor, where Barnes & Noble, Target, Costco, that area was put into place at that point in time. I just felt like during that period of time, we made real progress in the city, and we made great advances. The Water Quality District, the Wellhead Protection Act, a lot of things that make our community what it is today took place during those times. And I feel like we need to do that again. We need to make the city council effective again, and that's why I'm running. Thank you.
Thank you. Stacy?
My name is Stacy Rye. I'm running for re-election in Ward 3. I've served for the past 4 years. For about 6 months, I've been employed by the University of Montana. I work for the Women's Studies Department. Before that, I was the director of a nonprofit for 5 years. I worked for the Brain Injury Association of Montana that works with people with disabilities. It was an incredibly challenging position, and I was glad to have the experience. Working as a director of a nonprofit and working as a council member and having a family is quite challenging, so I'm happy to scale back a little bit, and I've been doing that in the past year. I'm running for re-election because I think Missoula is largely different than it's ever been. And it takes a lot of knowledge and passion and experience to work on things like $40 million budgets and sidewalks and taxes and how we meet our budget. Redevelopment is huge now. Redevelopment is not just about street trees and flower baskets any longer. Growth and land use. So it takes a lot of knowledge to work on those things, and I believe I have that knowledge. I also have a passion for doing so, and I believe in policy over politics. I love policy, and I love getting into the middle of it. One of the things I've done on council was I was Mike Cadis' substitute on public power, and that was enormously challenging to learn about the power arena. I don't think many council members ever in Montana have the opportunity to learn about such a thing, probably because it's mostly a state issue. We still have things to work on. I believe in diverse neighborhoods, which have lot sizes for all people and are not standardized. I'm very proud of the mill site, which was a brownfield site and is turning over, and I helped immensely in that. And it's a public-private partnership, and it's an example of what the city is moving towards in 2007. Thank you.
Thank you. And our first question, which we'll start with Justin in Ward 1. As an elected official, if you had to vote today for the future of the Broadway corridor and funding was not an issue, would you support the Broadway corridor as a 3-lane thoroughfare or 4?
One of the benefits to being a younger candidate is that my outlook is a lot longer. I certainly have about at least 40 plus years that I'm planning on living in Missoula.
Me too.
And so I have a vested interest, certainly, in how it progresses and how it develops. So one of the things that I've certainly taken a look at is really the projected plan of what that corridor is actually supposed to be over the next 20 or 30 years. And it is online if you care to Google it. But it's quite interesting. It really actually shows pictures of what it is today versus what it will be 10 years from now versus 20 years from now. And I think given that plan, I would certainly be in support of what that long-range plan is, which having it a 3-lane road. I think that, as things allow and if traffic does not increase, certainly we may look at 4 lanes. But if you look at the entire plan, the 3 lanes really does fit with that plan.
Thank you. Jason, same question.
Well, I think these are kind of fun questions, the if money was no object question, because, we can sort of have flights of fancy. if money really was no object in Broadway, we could buy additional right-of-way, we could reconfigure the waterfront. We can accommodate all modes, I think, to our fullest satisfaction. As it stands, I think there are trade-offs between making the road a thoroughfare and a place in itself. We have had a public process to take a look at what that road is going to look like, and the Charette's vision for this really was a place-based approach. Now, if there's a 4-lane design that can accommodate and be compatible with that, I'd certainly be willing to examine it. However, that shouldn't come at the expense of accommodating bicycle, bus, and pedestrian uses of the road.
Thank you. John?
The 3-lane approach is really a 2-lane with a turning lane in the middle. And there's a finite capacity what a 2-lane road can handle, and we're about there now. There's troubles on the west end as we speak that say we should indeed get the stoplight in at Palmer so we can start to get some gaps in the traffic. Businesses, as you all know, objected a lot to the 3-lane, and businesses downtown really object to the 3-lane all the way through to Madison Street. So I'm in favor of the 4-lane. It's going to take probably moving the bicycle lanes to a separate bicycle pedestrian trail on the riverfront, which I think is a really good idea, and that's part of the cost is no object problem. There's a few places we need some more right-of-way. One unfortunate thing is I'm afraid we've walked away from the idea of a 4-lane because it was grandfathered in, and now the right-of-way we have isn't wide enough for the proper use of a 4-lane road. We're going to have to go back and redesign some things. But it is business I-90. It's the only remaining east-west thoroughfare through Missoula. So that's the only real way we have to go from east to west in the main, not only in downtown, but the whole town. So I think a 4-lane is the right answer. Get the stoplight in at Palmer Street and begin process of moving the bicycle lane and a trail along the river so we can accommodate 4 lanes. And I will now stop. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Pam.
I'll come right out and say I would vote for 3-lane thoroughfare. And thoroughfare, again, I agree, is not a good term because West Broadway and all of Broadway, you don't want people traveling through. You want them to stop and stay. The 4-lane configuration, I was at the Charette. The traffic engineers say a 3-lane, a 2 with a center turn, whether it's counterintuitive or not, moves traffic better. And you get more cars going through than a 4-lane. Now, a 5-lane, I mean 4 lanes with a center turn lane, that's what we're talking about with additional right-of-way that would definitely move traffic through. But a 4-lane with no way of turning cars into a business other than stopping traffic in that lane, those are actual problems. So I fully support the 3-lane concept, but it's not done. It's what we have now is not finished. We need to have better timing of lights. We need to have left turnability. There are a lot of things that need to be improved, and if you saw the things from the Broadway Charette, I just love the idea of 10, 20, 30 years down the road, what sort of gateway into the community West Broadway can be. Thank you.
Thank you. Doug?
My office is on West Broadway. I'm right there where it changes. People are fighting to get into Toole or go on Broadway. So in some ways, I feel like an expert on the subject. There's no question that West Broadway should be a 4-lane. Did we need a stoplight at Toole? Yes. Did we need additional lighting on West Broadway? Yes, we absolutely did. Did we need Broadway to be safer and look better? I mean, as a gateway into the community, yes, we do need that. Did we need to constrict the traffic, cause the congestion, and create the unsafe condition we have there today? No, we did not need to do that. There's another way around that. I think this has been a major failure on the city and its processes, and I definitely support a 4-lane.
Broadway, I mean, I love the question. If funding's not an issue, would you vote for a 3 or 4-lane Broadway? Well, a 4-lane. I mean, if funding's not an issue, then I would buy all of the right-of-way I possibly could and put 4 lanes there with bike lanes and as many amenities as I possibly could, including bridges over the top of it and tunnels under the bottom of it, and making sure that everyone could get through the best that they could for all modes of traffic. Broadway's funny. It seems to be the biggest public works Rorschach test I think we've had in Missoula in a long time. The charrette that we went through, drew hundreds of people, and I loved the process that we went through to do that, and we got some great answers. And I think that area, as many of the others have said, is ripe for redevelopment, and I think we have to wait for some of that to happen because the area in which it lies is changing, and it's not going to look like that in 20 years. It's going to look a whole lot different than that.
Thank you. Our next question, which I'd like to start with Ward 2, Dawn. What specific steps would you implement to retain existing business and attract new businesses to Missoula?
I don't think we have much trouble attracting new businesses here. Missoula sells really well. We have good schools, we have outdoor activities, we have opportunities for recreation. We have a lot of things. We're on best 10 lists in many, many magazines. So Missoula, in terms of attracting businesses, does pretty well. I think the standard tax abatement for some years and that sort of thing makes sense to implement that, but that sort of thing. But what we really need to work on is retaining and expanding existing businesses. They're the ones we really need to protect. We need to do everything we can, go to them to see what do you need from the city so you can expand? What do you need to create more jobs? And we don't do that very well. We have the MCDC group with Rosalie Cates and MAEDC with Dick King. I always get Steve and Dick mixed up here, but this is Dick King. They do an extraordinary job of working at outreach for us and have recently brought the Dish Network group here with 1,100 employees with pretty good paying jobs. A major deficiency of this town is that we do not promote good job growth near enough. I'm getting the stop signal. This stop in a minute is tough, but anyway, we need better jobs and more pay.
Thank you.
First of all, I'd be an active member in the City Council's Economic Development Subcommittee and encouraging much more frequent meetings and outreach to the business community. I'm a really strong supporter of encouraging entrepreneurial spirit. It's amazing how much a small amount of money can do to grow a business, especially something from within. We have some of the brightest and best in Missoula. And with a small amount of infused money, whether it's from the Missoula Area Economic Development Corporation, MRA, or whatever, there's so much that can be expanded. I've seen it trickling down from the state in the Made in Montana program, where small grants can make craftsmen and manufacturers able to go to new wholesale shows to expand their business. We had in Missoula, we've got, I guess a perfect example is nutrition labs. I'm not sure if they're still called that, where they were able to get assistance from within to help them grow and move into Missoula. And then now they've even been able to attend the International South American Symposium too. So those kinds of programs will really help businesses grow in Missoula. Thank you.
And Doug?
I think to retain business, I'd start by listening to them. West Broadway is another good example. We told the consultants that we have over 70 customers a day come into our doors. And now, numerous accidents later, nothing's changed, even though they said if this doesn't work, we'll just change it back. And I think they never really heard what we were saying, because now we feel like it's an unsafe condition for some of our customers. That being said, maybe we need a business advocate in City Hall. Right now in OPG, there's something like 5 crime victim advocates. We have a bicycle pedestrian advocate coordinator, however. Maybe it's time we had some liaison with the business community within OPG itself. Attracting new business requires even more work, but it's necessary that if we're going to create a viable economy, we need new businesses in here. So, and I think in order to do that, we need to look at what Montec's doing. We need to look at Missoula Area Economic Development Corporation. And also, I think we need to refocus on the role that MRA is playing in our community. Right now, I feel like MRA is kind of picking up any little cost that nobody else wants to deal with, and I think we need to look at that a lot harder.
Thank you. Stacy?
Well, as unsexy as it is, infrastructure, I think, is the most critical piece that the city, that government can do to help businesses and attract new ones. Steve Keene is the head of Public Works, and he's fond of saying that a sign of a sophisticated society is sewer. And it's not terribly elegant, but it's true that infrastructure is one of the biggest things that government can do to be right in there to attract businesses. You know, I've heard over the past couple of years from a variety of different businesses, mostly large ones in Missoula, that they're having a hard time retaining folks at $9, $10, $12 an hour. And I think one of the problems is housing. And we don't have a terribly diverse housing stock here when it comes to ownership. We do have a little bit better stock when it comes to rentals. And one of the things, I mean, it's a private market, but one of the things government can do in that arena is to promote regulations that make it easier to build housing for all sorts of folks within that market. And I think there's a giant market for that housing market, and we can't attract businesses or retain businesses if we don't have people to work there.
Thank you, Stacy. Justin?
Well, in general, I'm for fewer regulations, but I think that it comes down to one simple issue. I think it's really quality over quantity. And I think one of the things that we need to do as Missoulians is really kind of come together with a central vision. As a headhunter, I go out every day and work with Fortune 500 companies and recruit top talent. I see no reason why, as Don mentioned, we have an amazing community here. I see no reason why we can't go out and attract these large businesses to come here to Missoula because of what we have to offer. More and more these days, as technology tends to develop, we're actually able to attract workers who are able to work from home and not work in a corporate office. And Missoula offers a quality of life that really attracts those type of workers. So for me, it really boils down to quality over quantity.
Thank you. Jason?
Well, I think a lot of the folks who've spoken before me have hit upon things that I wanted to touch upon. Certainly quality of life is what drives people here, and top-notch workers are what make businesses go. So, you know, I think an important thing we have to do is sustain the quality of life here in order to keep quality workers here. And that's going to mean addressing a housing issue, among other things. I think, like Don, that the primary focus of economic development should be helping local businesses to get started or to expand and intensify their participation in the local and the regional economy. I think targeted tax incentives, loan guarantees, subsidized infrastructure, these may all be appropriate tools given that the end that we're seeking is correct. You need to be smart about how we do this. To correct Don here, I actually have one of those jobs out at DirecTV, which is not Dish Network, since they're kind of like a competitor. But that's okay.
Sorry about that.
You know, and those are good jobs, but they're out at exit 99. I can't go anywhere for lunch. You know, that I can't. I have to drive clear across town in order to get there. And you know, they're putting a big demand on our infrastructure. And so when we build, we need to be smart about where we do it.
Thank you.
No
Our
problem.
next question, I'd like to start with Doug in Ward 3. The Missoula Area Chamber of Commerce does not feel that it has been invited to the planning or decision-making process at all levels of government. What would you do to change this?
I think the city government has to come to the realization that we're all in this together. A community cannot function without a strong economic base. The other night at the chamber banquet, I think I heard there's something like 980 businesses that are part of the chamber. That's simply too big to ignore in a community our size. So we not only keep the chamber informed, as I understand that Councilman Hendrickson has done an excellent job at doing, but we need to invite the chamber to have input into our processes. I think all planning needs to have an economic component, and the chamber's input is vital to that.
Thank you. Stacy?
It's been interesting working under Mike Cadis and both Mike Cadis and John Engen, because their styles are so different. And I disagree with John on some things, but I think one of the things he does extremely well is communication. And I think after 4 years, I've learned that communication is the single most biggest tool that is helpful in any sort of negotiation, whether it be an entity or a citizen. Gary comes to a lot of our meetings. We're happy to have him there. And I feel that, you know, we do try to listen to all aspects of public comment. I mean, we take a lot of public comment. We're extremely open to the public. And I'm just really pleased with the tone and tenor that the mayor has set with that, and I'm happy to continue with that tone for an open and transparent government that has been going on for the past couple of years.
Thank you. Justin?
I think I agree with Stacy in that it really does boil down to communications, and I think communicating between multiple aspects and organizations within the Missoula community. I think one of the ways to do it is really by forums like this, electing public officials that are at least receptive or willing to listen, and not just listen, but actively listen to your ideas and certainly your concerns. And one of the things that we certainly have going for Missoula is a very vibrant downtown. I love it when I drive down Higgins and I see that there's only maybe 1 or 2 franchises in all of downtown. I can think of, I think Starbucks is one of them, and then Macy's or the Bon. So for me, certainly as a small business owner myself, I often take a look at these sorts of forums and public debates and really choose my elected officials wisely. And to me, that's the best way to get my word out.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, as it happens, I have been employed as a communicator for several years, and so something of an expert on the subject. And I'm really looking forward on the council to spreading the word of what the council is up to in a very active way. And I want to involve everyone who has a stake in Missoula's future. I think we, like I said in my introduction, really need to connect the work of the city government with the values that Missoulians have. And this requires reaching out. The work of city government is not particularly transparent or easily accessible, but the things that it works upon are the fabric of our everyday lives. And so we need to be getting out there and expressing the work of the city council in terms of the values that people have. And that will certainly be one of my aims. And I think that means talking to everybody you can. When I read this question, actually, I gave Doug a call and just tried to find out more of what was behind it, because it seemed like there were specific issues. And see, West Broadway came up, and so did the lighting ordinance. And I think the lighting ordinance is a good example of, the chamber getting involved and having its input heard and having some feedback in the process. So, we just need to be active about getting you guys up there at the front of the line and have that conversation with everybody in the community. And I will certainly do so.
Thank you. John?
So, I'm out of step here. Are we on question 3 now?
3, please.
Sorry, a little slow. Yeah, I think we need to get the Chamber of Commerce into planning more than we have to this date. John certainly is a good, viable representative, but he does not have access to the Committee of the Whole report. That should be changed so he can be part of that every time we have one of those meetings that he's reporting back and forth. That's not happening now. I think Missoula is not very friendly to business as a whole. I think there's a lot to be improved with, and one of my favorite terms is ombudsmanship, which means reaching out. Well, let me take you by the hand and lead you through this city stuff. And we don't do that very well. We sort of have a barrier up there that says, give it to me and we'll let you know when you can come get it. And we need to do that far better than we are. We need to pay attention to zoning, and the plans that were made need to pay attention to zoning better than they do. For instance, Russ's Body Shop, who was a direct competitor of mine, wanted to build a new facility. It turns out that the zoning, which they were okay with, needed to be changed so they could continue to do the business they've been doing since the 1950s. But it was contrary to what was on the neighborhood plan. Now, there's a rule around that says the neighborhood plans are supposed to pay attention to zoning, which in this case it was not done. So we had to resolve this conflict. Fortunately, it got resolved in favor of Russ being able to go ahead and do what he wanted to do to his shop. But it's that sort of thing that we get in trouble with all the time.
Thank you. Pam?
I really think that the critical thing is early communication, early involvement. I've heard, whether it's a business or citizen, complain about going to city council and having their 3 minutes during a public hearing and then the vote's taken. What I've seen, especially more in recent times, is early involvement. Things like the West Broadway charrette and other projects, whether it was the zoning kickoff the new zoning rewrite. Getting the public, whether it's the residential public or the business sector, involved early. So There are subcommittees that the council has, like the Economic Development Subcommittee, that really would encourage to have chamber members be involved with that. Likewise, we could come to chamber and assist. But the important thing is getting a shared input, a shared feel in the early stages of any development, and that so that when a policy is made, we've already talked about it early. We don't have to wait until just before the vote to hear final complaints and whatever. Hopefully we resolved the issues, we've compromised, we've been able to work it out early and not having contention and fighting at the very end. Thank you.
Thank you, Pam. Our fourth question, to keep it interesting and everybody confused, we'll go backwards. We'll start with Stacy. As a member of City Council, how would you support the vitality of the construction industry in Missoula?
As I've said before, I think in the arena of government, our job mostly lies in regulations and rules, and I think we have a pile of regulations and rules which are probably about 6 inches thick. And earlier this year, we decided to go ahead with a zoning rewrite. I think that's going to be a big step in trying to make the process a little bit simpler. In the Public Works Department, we already have a pretty good process for the construction industry. A permit takes anywhere from 5 to 15 minutes to get on average, and we do that very well with a computer system that we bought some years ago. But we have to make our regulations on the planning side a little bit simpler so that they're human intensive, meaning we have to have a human to clearly understand them. We can't do them by computer. But the zoning rewrite, I think, will go a long way towards making the process quite a bit simpler for folks in that industry. Thanks.
Stacy, Doug?
In 1986, when I first came on the council, construction was at a total standstill, and it had been for 2 or 3 years. I don't know if you guys recall that time period or not, but you couldn't find a job in Missoula. So I know what it's like to have that sector of our economy suffering. It's pretty tough. Supporting the construction industry requires that we have reasonable and transparent rules and regulations that apply to everyone equally. Right now, there's too much interpretation by city departments and by city departments in the construction field. There's too much is up in the air that requires someone looking at it. Increasing taxes, SIDs, doesn't have to be a way of life, and it hasn't always been in Missoula. The vitality of the construction industry is directly related to the ability to buy what's built. And so that means that the vitality of this industry is tied closely to the vitality of the rest of this business community, because if you don't have the jobs to pay for construction, then you're in a lot of trouble. So I think the focus on business and the jobs is the way to go with that.
Thank you, Doug. Pam?
When I read this question, I was sitting at my house, and I live in the old west side of town, and I was kind of confused because from my living room, I could see or hear 5 different home construction projects right around me. And this is a neighborhood that was built up in 1912. So I have a family who is building a house by themselves right across the street from me in a 1 1/3 lot. Behind me, I have a townhome, 2 townhomes going in. Around the corner, I've got the 6-plex that's going on the corner of Phillips and Burton, and another house that has been taken out and a new home built. So I've got all these projects all around me, and I see that this construction industry seems to be doing pretty well. But in the next question that we're going to be asked involves a lot of some of the problems with length of time and the issues with whether or not there are clear procedures, clear rules for everyone to follow. And the zoning is being redone, and when I was on the study commission, we saw that there were people complaining the ordinances were just too complex and poorly written, and they need to be rewritten so that it be helpful for everyone. Thank you.
How to help the construction industry. I think the construction industry right now is pretty strong. They're involved in rebuilds and modifications of the existing businesses. They're involved in building new homes for new businesses that come to town. They're involved in growth. So we have growth. We don't have strong enough new businesses. So we really should be concentrating, once again, I say, on employment. The employment factor of town is what drives the construction business. The unemployment right now is remarkably low, so we aren't in real trouble in terms of too many people looking for too few jobs. We have training at the College of Technology for carpentry, welding, and so forth, so we have a lot of facilities in town and a good workforce to take this on. But once again, it comes down to jobs. I am a great proponent of the medical facilities in this town having adjunct types of businesses that support them being as a focus for growth in this town. We have two of the very best hospitals in the whole Northwest, and we should by all means jump on them as a way of growing this town bigger and stronger.
Thank you, Don. Jason?
Thanks. I think, Missoula owes it to the construction industry to clearly delineate our expectations with respect to zoning, design standards, and other development tools, such as and I think that can provide an expeditious permitting process. I think there are other steps that could probably be taken or have been taken. I understand that the Office of Planning and Grants has recently created a position designed to review applications for their completeness at the outset of a permitting or subdivision process. And this should, I think, move the process along a little bit by ensuring that there's not a lot of back and forth between the planners themselves and the person submitting the application, but that the planner can dedicate their time to reviewing the application with respect to the rules. Government should obviously be efficient. The users of government, particularly the people who are coming before it seeking permissions and under existing regulations, have a good feel for what's working and what's not, and so we should be open to feedback about when we're being efficient and when we're not. I think some progress has been made on that front, and certainly there could be more.
Thank you, Jason. Justin?
OPG is not efficient. That's part of the problem, I think, and part of the frustration that certainly comes from the construction sector and the industry. One of the main issues is that we've touched on is the zoning rewrite, and that when a developer or when a contractor buys a piece of land to build a spec house or a small development, whether it be a large scale or a small scale development, oftentimes at OPG, the left hand doesn't know what the right hand is doing. And so the developer or the contractor gets one message from one person in OPG and a completely separate message from another person. So I certainly hope that through the rewrite process, that does get cleared up, and that the laws, or at least what someone is able to do on their piece of land, is followed strictly according to how it's zoned. That's certainly how someone buys a piece of property, and that's how it should be developed. The second, obviously, approach or aspect that we need to think about is the jobs. People need to be able to afford a piece of the development that's being developed. And certainly at the end of the day, every contractor wants to get paid. But if you follow the chain of events, it looks actually like whoever is able to buy that piece of land or that development is certainly paying the contractor. So I think it really comes down to better jobs and people being able to afford the developments that are being built.
Thank you, Jason. Our next question is related, and some of you addressed it to the degree. And we'll start with Ward 2 and Pam. As a candidate running for City Council, by now you should be aware of the length of time it takes to approve subdivisions, get permits, etc. Please share with us your ideas on how to address this issue.
Okay, as we've been discussing, first of all, there are several factors, and one of the first ones we've been discussing is that ordinances, including the zoning ordinances, are confusing and contradictory. And so we've got the first step of the rewrite with the zoning, and all of them need to be rewritten. We've discussed that in the Local Government Study Commission and strongly even recommended a position for the council to actually to help write ordinances. So not only do we rewrite them, but we make sure that they will always be well written and not contradictory. Secondly, there is no fee for plan review, and OPG has expressed their concerns that they get people coming in with plans and they review them, spend a lot of staff time doing that, and the project's never developed. essentially what happens is those who will develop their project have to wait in line to have all this happen. There's reduced staff time to work on that, and that's just one small tool, recognizing what the impact is on OPG for things like plan review, that sort of thing. The third is probably the last most important, is that council needs to establish a long-term vision on what is development and then follow through with ordinance and zoning that matches that vision. Thanks.
Pam, Don?
Thank you. There's really two questions here. The subdivision subject is we get all kinds of applications for subdivision, and once we accept that subdivision application, the clock starts to say you have to be done by thus and so many days. Many times. We get it at the council with 1 week left. You have to approve it in this committee, or you have to vote on it Monday night. Many of those applications come to us, they're not complete. So the intake person needs to be more aggressive and more careful about accepting a plan, not the back of an envelope deal, but accepting a plan that's really ready to go through. That's not done well enough. Secondly, on the permit side of things, if we would get enough copies of the plans when they're submitted, so that we could have one for the police and one for the fire and one for building inspection, et cetera, and put them out in parallel rather than dominoes. Now it goes first to police and then to fire and then so forth. It takes forever. If we put them out in parallel, we could have the person who's the intake person following up and could call them up and say, where's your plan? It's due back here now, and put a definite schedule on it, and not accept an awful lot of excuses about, well, I haven't had time, or well, whatever, I haven't heard from police yet. There's a lot of ego going on in this plan review stuff that needs to get stopped. We really need to be far more aggressive about the clock on subdivisions and about the how to clear these plans. They'll clear, and the subdivider wants them done, and so there's real motive on their part, but they really do. We just got to do a better job. No.
Thank you, Don. Jason?
Well, I think the first thing in getting things moving along is to get very clearly written ordinances and regulations so that they are easy to apply and easy to comply with. And I think we're on our way to doing that. I mean, we're dealing with a zoning ordinance that was written essentially for a different planet. It's so old. So I think that'll help things along. And Don had some good specific ideas that are definitely worth looking into some more. This is partly going to be a learning process for me. I don't understand the inner machinations of the Office of Planning and Grants that well. I do think that we have pretty good throughput there, especially if you measure it against other communities that are up against similar growth pressures. And but there's always room to do things quicker. At the same time, we don't need to rush things. Plan and permitting review is about ensuring that what we develop matches what our community has said it wants built. There are environmental questions, there are infrastructure questions that are important and that have to be answered. And that takes time to do it right. And so we can't expect that review is going to be an instantaneous process, but still should be an expeditious one.
Thank you, Jason. Justin?
I don't think that we need to rush things, but at the same time, it shouldn't take 2 years for a minor subdivision to get through and be approved. I've had experience actually myself, and I'm currently in the process of doing a small subdivision on my own. And I'll tell you, it's extremely expensive, about $25,000 later, and maybe about a stack of paper that is about 2 feet thick for a small, simple line in my property. So I certainly understand the bureaucracy, and I think that small people, or people who are doing very minor subdivisions, are the ones that pay the price. One of the things that I've certainly learned through going through this process at OPG are the laws and the regulations that have to be followed, and every single department imaginable needs to have a copy of your report, and if there's a small revision, then that whole copy needs to be resubmitted. And about $25,000 later, and maybe $12,000 of that is actually in copy fees to get all of these things covered. So I certainly believe that there needs to be a more expeditious process. I think that OPG, specifically in Missoula, is one of the most bureaucratic and probably poorly run Office of Planning and Grants in the entire state. If you look at Bozeman and Billings, they have half the staff and do just as much work. Although I am certainly in support of Roger Millar, I think that was a great pickup. for the city of Missoula, and I think he's doing a great job, but hopefully we need to give enough time to kind of turn this thing around.
Thank you, Justin. Stacy?
You know, I think a lot of this has to do, like Jason said, with zoning regulations that were written 35 years ago, and largely for a very, very different place, and doesn't reflect what's on the ground at all now. I think OPG does an excellent job within the constraints that they have. If we want everything to move as quickly as possible, then we need to adequately fund that department to do so. The other thing is we're talking about, when it comes to developments, we're talking about projects that we need to certify on behalf of the community, that they're safe, that it's not built in a floodplain, that the roads get built to standards, and that takes time. And if there's any variances or special exceptions asked for, then that takes time as well, because we have to look at on behalf of the entire community, not just on behalf of the developer. I think we can do a better job. The regulations can be a lot simpler. It should not take months and months, and it shouldn't cost thousands of dollars to be able to go see if your garage can move 2 feet. But the difference between small developers and large developers is immense.
Stacy, Doug?
Let's see, I just want to acknowledge right up front, though, some of the time that's required on subdivision review is outside of the city's control. But that being said, if I have a problem in our company, I'll look at two things. One of the first things I look at is the question: is this a system problem or is it a people problem? And this, what we're seeing today in the city, is a system problem. And I think there's been some, Don alluded to some specific things that we could do to take care of that. Now, there are some things that we could remedy fairly quickly, and it doesn't deal with subdivisions, but deals with some of the other things in dealing with the city. Right now, if I call the city, if I could call them on my cell phone right now, and if I call them, first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to get into their phone system, and I'm going to hear some menus, and I'm going to be in those menus for quite a while. I'm not going to talk to a person. If I'm going to talk to a person, I'm going to be there for quite a while. And after listening to a number of menus, if I need to speak to someone, they're going to end up having to call me back. And that's a real problem, because if we can't answer the simplest of questions just right up front, then complex issues like subdivision, we don't have a chance on. So I think we could remedy some of these problems right up front.
Thank you, Doug. Our last question, I'm going to start with Jason. How do you propose Missoula plan for growth in both the residential and business sectors?
Well, I think that planning for growth in Missoula really should begin with the neighborhoods, and that's comprising both residences and commercial enterprises. The work should proceed through neighborhood plans that are incorporated in the growth policy, and where it's possible, enforced with zoning. And I think it's really important that these neighborhood plans be revised at very regular intervals, so they remain forward-looking documents that retain flexibility to adjust as people's expectations of what will be in their neighborhoods changes. When you have a document that's 15 years old, it reflects something other than the beliefs of the people who are on the ground about what should be coming. And, you know, as change happens incrementally, people's expectations of what's appropriate changes. If we continually give them the flexibility to revise those expectations and have them incorporated in the law, we will have very clear guidelines about what should go on the ground and where.
Thank you, Jason. Justin?
I think the main thing that Missoula really needs to do is kind of take a look at the downtown core area and specifically concentrate on what I call vertical growth. I'm certainly for building and maybe lifting some height restrictions where necessary in the downtown core area to really limit sprawl. One of the things I've done is certainly visited many neighborhoods, and there are two sectors of Missoula, it seems. There's one on the north side and kind of the North Reserve area, and then there's certainly one that is kind of more of the downtown core area. And I think one of the things, getting back to business, that we have going for us is our quality of life. And if we continue to let sprawl grow and continue out westward unchecked, I think that it really is going to cut down on the quality of life and our viability to sell ourselves to other businesses who may want to do business here in Missoula. So I'd certainly be in support of really building in the infrastructure downtown where appropriate, and then allowing kind of for more rural areas to have larger lot sizes and fewer buildings where appropriate.
Thank you, Justin. Stacy?
You know, again, in the arena of government, the one thing that the council and to some extent the administration can do well is in the arena of policy. And I think the council does that fairly well. We're really proactive when it comes to formulating a policy that reflects Missoula as it is now. The changes that happen on the ground in Missoula that are far and away from any sort of governmental interference simply have to be reflected in some sort of city policy, or the entire process becomes obsolete one from the other. I mean, a city is a dynamic place, and if we don't kind of keep up with each other, private and public, then I think we kind of get lost to some extent. And I think that the city government is a well-oiled machine for the most part. Yes, we always have something to complain about, and things could always be better, but for the most part, we're doing a fairly good job. I think the most important thing we can do is recognize that we have to have a diversity of housing stock, and we have to help build for that housing stock, no matter what it might be. One of the things that's coming in the future when it comes to growth is we're going to have a shortage of what the market is going to demand in the next 20 years, and that's a different subject, but it's things like condos and townhouses, and we don't have that in Missoula.
Stacy, Doug?
This is a very complex area, and if you really wanted to deal with this, it'd take a lot longer than what we have right now, but I'm going to run through this really quickly. So if in order to meet the challenges of the future, we have to keep planning on the front burner. And there's just a couple of points I want to make here. We can't expect people to go to endless meetings that go nowhere. Good planning should not depend on the survival of the fittest. I mean, or for those who have nothing else to do. Now, planning for infrastructure is a whole area in itself, and I'd love to talk about that for a little bit, but I want to talk about business planning, future planning for business. Maybe we start future planning for business by having discussion about future trends that could affect Missoula in the long run here. What will Missoula be seeing 5, 10, 15 years from now? So for an example, if insurance rates continue to rise and we have an aging workforce, will companies begin to hire health officers to oversee their wellness programs? Greater emphasis on innovation and design could also change how we educate and train our workforce. What we need to do is planning for the growth of the business sector requires that we identify possibilities for the future, and then that we apply those possibilities to ourselves and our situation right now. But we need to have those discussions if we're really going to do this. I know I'm stopping, but this is a huge area. It includes infrastructure, it includes business, it includes our housing, it includes everything. So it's a complex issue.
Thank you, Joe. Pam?
And I agree, it's a very complex issue. So one of the things that I think about dealing with both residential and business sectors together is that we should try to encourage growth not be in just one portion of the city as far as residential growth. We need to ensure that there are affordable housing units throughout the entire city, not just in one area. And as we develop, we want to make sure our transportation system is adequate for the current and future development. But more importantly, I think we need to plan for multi-use development, not just have a residential section and have a commercial section out in the county where DirecTV is. As Jason was saying, he's got to drive a long way just to get lunch, and think of all those people who have to drive home that are impacting the transportation system. So granted that's out in the county, but as we're developing within the city and developing business, encouraging that developments have not only houses, but have a source of their services there, have grocery stores, have things they need there, and hopefully also the business they work to, so it can really reduce the infrastructure demands and transportation. Thanks.
Pam, Don?
Planning for growth is a very complicated subject, as my compatriots have said up here. But we can do some things that are pretty simple that we don't do very well. For instance, we just finished the Y-Mullen plan, and we had a wonderful time on what I call the south end of the runways, putting in roads and things. But when you try to talk about the north end of the runway, nobody wanted to talk about that. But our ward, Ward 2, is the one that's growing. We just lost 2 precincts to other wards in order to equalize population. So if you just drew a line on a map and said, this is going to be an arterial, so when a developer came in with his plan, he had to recognize that there was an arterial there, and he's going to have to leave 100-foot right away, and he's going to have to pave at least half the street, etc. We'd get a foot up on, or a leg up, I guess, on how to do this right. We don't do that very well. In terms of, and I really believe in zoning, I think our commercial and industrial zones kind of get walked over. We do not look at our commercial zones carefully enough. We sure don't look at the industrial zones. We allow housing to go into commercial and industrial, then it comes time to build some industrial complex, and there's all these houses in there. It's a real mess. So we need to take more tight control of the zoning for commercial and industrial, and not allow these things to happen that have been happening to us. It's a very complicated subject, and I appreciate the 1 minute we have here, but it's not near enough.
Thank you, Don. Now I'd like to open it up to questions from the floor. You can direct your question to any one candidate. We will, however, allow all candidates to respond to that question. Yes, John.
It's the first question was in regards to West Broadway, and the Broadway charrette was brought up by a few of you on a number of occasions. In the Broadway charrette plan, there is a recommendation by the consultants, because as we all know, the funding is not there for Broadway right now, for West Broadway to go back to a 4-lane. One of their recommendations is to push the 3-lane corridor all the way down to Van Buren, through downtown, all the way down to East Broadway. I would like to know from each of you where your stand is on implementing the 3-lane all the way down to Van Buren and why.
Yeah, down there, start Justin.
Okay. You know, I mean, without having really given it much thought, I've certainly taken a look at the West Broadway corridor plan as it stands as a whole in kind of the given area. I haven't heard of it being kind of talked about really being extended down to Van Buren. On the onset, that doesn't sound to me like a great idea. I think the West Broadway corridor is a separate area and a certain destination point, separate from downtown. And I think it needs to be looked at completely separately. So at the onset, no, I wouldn't be in favor of continuing it down to Van Buren.
Well, I think about that section of Broadway every day. I use it almost continually. And the reason that the charrette makes the recommendation that it does is because there's a connection between road design and the uses of the land around it. The 3-lane alternative presents and enhances this place-based approach where you create pedestrian, bicycle, and shopper-friendly spaces. If that's what we want our downtown to be, if we want it to be a place where people feel like they can get out and walk around and move across the street with ease, then the 3-lane alternative is the appropriate one, and I will support it.
I think the 3-lane approach doesn't make any sense either in West Broadway or East Broadway. It's a bad idea that has legs. It's being tried out now. I think because of capacity limitations, it's going to fail in the not too distant future. I'm anxious to get back to it, and I think because the East Broadway part wasn't brought up very much in the charrette, if any, it should be stripped out of the plan before that charrette report goes to the planning board.
The idea of the model of the downtown being a place and having roads matching that is not new for Broadway. It's also been discussed for Higgins, and I believe North Higgins is eventually planning on being moved to a 3-lane also. And there are a lot of, again, the people much smarter than I in traffic engineering say, if you don't believe it or not, you can move the traffic through. And again, as Jason said, do you want people just to move through downtown Missoula, just drive from one end to the other for whatever purpose? Or do you want them to stop, get out of their car, and shop and spend their money, or get out of their car and work there? If you want them to move them right through, the 4-lane or a 5-lane, something is the best way to do it. No parking on the street, nothing. But as it stands, if you want this to be a sense of a place where people will get out of their cars and keep the downtown as vibrant as it is, we need to have a good throughway, and very possibly the 3-lane is the solution.
You, Doug?
I don't even know where to start, but I guess one of the things we need to ask ourselves is, what is the goal of our transportation plans and our transportation systems? I think that'd be a good place to start. I would disagree with putting a 3-lane through the whole thing. One of the challenges I had with the charrette was that I'm reading the Montana Constitution. I hear that I have the right to know and the right to participate, but the charrette happens after the fact. And the question I have, would we do this before or after input from the public? And that's one of the questions I have. And I think a 3-lane would be a mistake. I think there are ways to make West Broadway, East Broadway, the whole thing. I think there's a way to make it a lot better, where it looks a lot better, and there's ways to accommodate pedestrians without doing this drastic surgery to neck down traffic. And I'm not sure what we're trying to accomplish with doing that.
Thank you, Stacy.
Well, there are lots and lots of recommendations in that plan. One of the smaller ones is that idea that John mentioned. Traffic engineering is often counterintuitive. That's what I've learned in the past 4 years. As of right now, I don't particularly see why it would go to 3 lanes for that section of road, largely because of the difference in land uses between Van Buren and about Orange Street and about Mullen Road are very different from each other. But I have to say, folks, that while it might be a little bit congested, it might take a few seconds longer, we haven't had any deaths on that road since it was changed, and we did have a process that we went through to turn it to 3 lanes, and that was not done in the dark and under mushrooms. I think for the time being, we have to take more than a 2-year approach to this. We have to look at it very, very long term. Thanks.
Thank you. Another question? Gary?
I always have questions. We understand that gas tax monies pay for the roads, and that the gas tax money that we receive is kind of flatlined. It has not grown. Understand that cost of fuel is up and maybe people are driving fewer miles. Our costs of rebuilding and building new roads has increased because the cost of oil has increased. How can the city accommodate the differential in the amount of revenues coming in to currently pay for road construction and repair to our future needs that have increased dramatically? What source can we do to fill that gap of lost revenue?
Anybody want to start?
I can start. I come from a different premise. I don't believe the city is totally out of money. I think we can have better use of the money that we have. I mean, if we spend $4 million more on swimming pools or whatever, spend too much money on City Hall, I believe it's a prioritization issue, and that we can clearly identify, and we can meet the needs of this community. This is not rocket science. I mean, we have certain amount of resources, we have certain amount of needs, and we can match those up better.
Thank you, Stacy.
You know what? Part of the problem on this is that roads are enormously expensive. And by state law, we're held to half of raising the city budget to half of inflation every year. The gas tax, I don't think, has moved in about 17 years. It's about 18 cents at the federal level. We're just not going to be able to keep up with bigger and better roads. So we have to look at different ways of doing that. It's not a matter of prioritizing $250,000, which is going to build about a half-mile section of road. That's not going to keep up with our infrastructure. So I think that we need to look at different ways of also moving traffic around, rather than saying, oh, we just need to be able to get the $30 million in Missoula from whatever pot of tax money that we can possibly get it into. And I also think that we need to keep up with our maintenance. And maintenance is enormously less expensive than building and expanding roads. And to do that, we need to spend a little bit of money every year to keep up with that. And therefore, we end up ahead 10 years from now, rather than being cheap about it in the beginning and having to pay more on the end 20 years from now when we're so far behind.
Thank you, Don.
You know, the easy part of this question is when a developer develops an area, he builds the roads. So the expansion of the city and the growth of the city is paid for by that person. But these folks that have said we're behind on infrastructure and support are right. We're at least $1 million a year short in maintenance costs of roads. We spend about $250,000, $300,000. We're way short. Having said that, I think there's plenty of money in the city budget now. We spend way too much time trying to figure out how to get more money and very little time on how to spend less. And we need to work on the expense side of our budget harder than we're doing now. For instance, we just found $400,000 that the water company gave us. We didn't put it into roads, we put it into other enhancements. But we find money, we don't look after it well enough. And I'm constantly critical of how we run our business in our city on many, many issues. This is just one example. Our infrastructure is behind, it needs maintenance, it needs to be caught up, and we need to just work smarter.
Thank you, Pam.
That's a really interesting issue when people start talking about whether or not they're going to be annexed into the city from the county, and the argument about who is paying for the roads. And it's unfortunate that the city has very limited resources on income, when it's not just city residents using the city roads, but county and visitors and whatnot. So trying to find ways to bring money in to pay for all of that, it's a big challenge. But if you can, as Don says, be as efficient as possible, it's still a very, very small pot of money we have. So rather than building new roads, which will just attract more cars and more traffic, I think we need to also focus on other aspects of our transportation system, getting people out of their cars and into more of either a public transportation system or developing smart so they don't have to be on the roads as much. But I completely agree with Stacy that we need to maintain what we have, because it's better to keep things in good repair than have to do some serious replacement later. Thanks.
Thank you. Jason?
Well, one answer would seem to me to be to have the folks who are creating the things that are requiring the building of new roads pay for them. And I know from reading this morning's paper that the chamber has taken a position opposing a transportation impact fee, but that seems to me to be an obvious step towards finding money to build and maintain roads that are being created by new development. And I would further like to see that concentrated in the areas of the city where there is specifically great amounts of growth going on, and not spread across the city as a whole, so that there's a direct tie between that fee and the infrastructure that's being built, as well as the ability to use that as a growth management tool to say, this is where we want people to go so that we don't need to build new roads, and if we're going to go into these other areas, those roads need to pay for themselves. That's not going to answer the problem, the transportation impact fee. You have a question of needs that are, costs that are outstripping revenues. Certainly we can look for efficiencies, but if you want to get more, you got to pay for more. And so we're going to need to find ways to do that. You can't, wish for the world and not be willing to pony up.
Thank you. Justin?
I think we already have impact fees in the form of taxes, and certainly we don't need any additional impact fees before we take a look at really fiscal responsibility and accountability. I think the city needs to be run a little bit more like a business and a tighter ship. I think oftentimes the money is being spent in more bureaucratic ways on administrative fees and other things, rather than on the infrastructure that we need on a daily basis. So I'd say accountability and kind of more fiscal restraint would certainly be wise. The other issue is certainly there's a big controversy about Hillview Way, And I think that certainly, residents and developers and contractors are certainly, flipping the bill for these new roads and the developments that they're building. But at the same time, you have a major arterial route that other people are using out on Mullen Road and in Linda Vista that aren't being taxed in the SID. And it doesn't seem like it's fair to me for the folks in a certain neighborhood to have to bear that burden, whereas it's being used as a major artery for other folks who are just passing through. So we need to take a look at that, but I think we can be more fiscally conservative in the way that we spend our money.
Thank you. Other question? Any other concerns? Jack, you have one?
There's a couple of small little issues, and one we just talked about, impact fees, and that transportation impact fee, and I haven't seen today's paper to see what our stance is, but, yeah, I mean, from the chamber board, the issue is not that we're against the transportation impact fee, it's that we want the city council to look at the high level that is proposed about, regarding commercial building. And it's not that we're against impact fees. So, and I think the chamber board certainly agrees with the infrastructure issues that most of you have brought up. So I guess in that light, maybe you want to talk about that transportation impact fee issue.
Thank you. Don?
The transportation impact fee is seen by our city as a found money deal again, where they're going to get $1 million from transportation impact fees. That's without analyzing that most of the burden is on commercial. For instance, if Costco wanted to rebuild their facility at some place within the city, that bill for the impact fee would be something near $600,000. It's just not in the realm of possibility. The idea of impact fees to pay for improvements in the direct area of where they're impacting, whether it be parks or police or transportation, is a good idea. But there needs to be restraint on it. It needs to be reasonable. So the impact fee idea has merit in terms of improving the area where they're assessed, but the idea of what's reasonable is not on the table at this point in time.
John?
If you think about the impact of building a house, you have one easily measured impact on the transportation system. But when you have a business which is bringing in people, which we hope is bringing in people from all over to be successful, the impact is not just in their direct neighborhood, not directly around them. You're bringing people from all over the place. You just have to look at North Reserve to see that. The very successful businesses in there, and the impact to the entire transportation system with Missoula is just been enormous. Picking up one company, Super Walmart, their success has caused all sorts of traffic issues at the Mullen North Reserve and area. So where are we going to get the money to fix all these roads? City has very limited ability to raise money. We have property taxes, we have gasoline tax, and what else do we have? Not much, some fees and whatever. So those who are going to be benefiting from their business within the city really do need to help pay for what it takes to bring their customers to them. It doesn't have to be exorbitant, but it should be reasonable, and it's not just your little immediate local area. Thanks.
I think that sounds great, but at the same time, isn't the goal or one of the goals for Missoula is really to attract businesses. So why attract business and at the same time, hit them over the head with a bat in the form of a large impact fee? To me, that certainly is more like slamming the door on businesses, and businesses certainly when they come in, they do bring people and they do bring business, but those people buy homes, those people have jobs, they pay taxes, and that certainly increases the tax base. So I think businesses certainly pay their fair share of taxes. Impact fees, it's not like impact fees are going to be the only tax that a business pays. So they contribute to their own tax base, which the city receives. I just think that the city should be more judicious in the way that it spends it.
Thank you, Jason.
Well, I think that enterprises that come in need to pay their way in terms of the infrastructure costs that they're imposing on everybody in town. And certainly commercial enterprises do more to create infrastructure needs than residences do. And so the transportation impact fee should pay attention to that. Now, maybe there's a question here of proportionality. The idea is not to just sort of squeeze every penny that we can out of everybody who comes to town, but at the same time, if we're not getting enough from this fee that these businesses are paying their way, then what we're doing is essentially subsidizing them. And, you know, government subsidies are not fiscally conservative. And so we need to have a fee that's proportional, that takes enough that we pay our way, and that these folks, you know, contribute to the good infrastructure that our city needs. And so, so I guess that's where I'm coming down on the issue of proportionality.
Thank you. Doug?
I don't know, all these are good points. I do think there is a reasonable in this aspect. If it doesn't look reasonable or sound reasonable, it's probably not. The issue of money is really interesting to me. I mean, we do have like somewhere between a $36 million and $38 million general fund budget. We'll spend like $92 million this year from the city will actually spend out in expenditures. These businesses that come in, they pay a good deal of taxes. There's one chart showing that since 1998, the taxes had increased in the city like 6.3% or something like that every year for the last, you know, well, through 98. So somehow we have to be able to use the money. We have to filter it to where the needs really are. And I think it really does take it'll take a close look. We need to take a close look at that. I don't know, just it's so easy to tax somebody else. It's so easy to put a fee on someone else. And if we talk about affordability in this community, the more things we come up with that, it all has an impact on down the line.
Thank you. Stacy?
Well, the impact fees that are proposed are the second lowest in the state of Montana from what already exists for Helena, Belgrade, Billings, and a couple other cities in Montana. Second lowest in the state are proposed in Missoula, and Missoula has the reputation of, you know, of course we know what Missoula has a reputation as if you were to go to Billings. You know, we have to pay for these services somehow. It's not free. Police officers don't work for free. Public Works doesn't work for free, and we have to find the funding for that someplace. And I think that the question is, do we want residents and old businesses to help subsidize the impacts of new commercial from wherever they may come from, or do we want that growth to pay its own way? And you know, is it fair to the older businesses to be subsidizing the newer businesses? So I think that's a valid question. I think it has to be fair, but I think asking everyone, when it comes to growth, to pay their own way up front is not inherently an unfair thing for us to do.
Thank you. We've reached near the end, so at this point I'd like to have each of the candidates spend a minute summing up your view. Justin?
Well, I guess in summary, I'm running for city council for really a specific reason, because I really care about the Missoula community and I have a vested interest in the way that it grows. Since '94, when I came here at 18, not knowing a single person until today, I've invested not only personally but also financially in the community. I'm a homeowner. I own several rental properties in town. I've rented in the Rattlesnake. So I've been on many different sides of the equation. And when I look at city council and having attended almost all the meetings in the last 5 months, I'd say 70 to 80% of what comes before city council has to do with zoning and subdivide issues. And my background in real estate, understanding the laws, what developers can do and what zoning restricts them from doing, I certainly have an understanding of what what is needed, and certainly the constraints that are put on a lot of folks that come before council. So I'd like to see myself as more of a middle of the road person, someone who represents more of the silent majority. I'm certainly not liberal and I'm not conservative. I'm right down the middle, and I would hope that anyone who comes to council really comes to that as an objective opinion and looks at everything rather than coming to it with an agenda. So that's what I'm about, and that's why I decided to run.
Thank you, Justin. Jason?
Thanks. Well, this campaign originates in my going to too many meetings. This is essentially what it is. You show up often enough, and sooner or later, somebody's going to ask you if you ever thought about running. And the truth was, I guess yes. I mean, on some level, I guess I thought more about what it would be like to govern than to run, because a campaign is a very different sort of thing. But that's how I got into this. Is the folks who were there started to wonder if I was gonna become part of this in a formal way, because I've been, I guess they felt, a constructive part of the process up until that point. And so, I've been it's been a real pleasure to run, and I'm hoping that it'll also be a pleasure to serve. And I thank you for your time.
Thank you. Mr. Dodd?
I think all 6 of us and the other 6 that aren't here show a lot of ingenuity and a lot of courage about wanting to make Missoula a better place to be. The reason we're all doing it is we like Missoula a lot. Personally, I'd like to see Missoula change direction fiscally primarily, but I think we're all dedicated to the betterment of Missoula. It's a fantastic place to be. As you've seen from the questions, my compliments to the Chamber for the quality of the questions. They're a good spectrum of questions that we've been asked to answer here, and covered an awful lot of the front that we deal with all the time. Pam and I are markedly different, as you've seen in our answers to the questions. We'll have a spirited and a high-level campaign, I'm sure. We'll be at other forums and have opportunities to discuss these and other issues. There's a lot of other issues we should spend time on, but there's not sufficient time now. My thanks to the Chamber for the sponsorship, and we'll look forward to the next month and a half of campaigning. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Pam.
I am too looking forward to a nice spirited campaign. It's nice to have someone that is pretty much an opposite to run against. But I think I really, just because we're different doesn't mean that I'm not fiscally conservative. I'm not good for the economic development of the city. I've been labeled with being progressive. I thought I was a radical moderate, but whatever that is, because I've worked in in industry. I've been in education. That's a wide variety of things and ways to look at things. I got into this because I really think that all the people within the ward and even the city need to be represented, and I've felt that that's not been going on. It's not just business, it's people. You don't have to exclude one group for the other, and I think all of our citizens can be represented by their council people. That I've talked about neighborhoods, and neighborhoods aren't just houses with people living in them. They're the businesses, they're the roads, they're the schools, the hospitals, the police. A neighborhood is everything, and this city is divided up into neighborhoods. The only road that's not in the neighborhood is probably Interstate 90 itself. So I got the stop sign, I guess I have to stop.
Thank you, Doug.
I was going to say, what a great day to be part of this in the future of Missoula, to think about where we're going and what we're going to be doing. It's a great community, and and it has a great future, and that's what I see, and that's what I want to be part of. I think our best days are ahead of us. We need people in government that are able to meet the challenges, that can come to issues with a broad-based perspective, a professional perspective. A great deal of time and energy can be wasted on talking about issues that really don't affect us at all, or that don't really move us forward. And we need people that are able to focus in on the issues that affect this community, and to think about how we can move forward and progress in this community. My vision is for a healthy, a vibrant community with good jobs, safe neighborhoods, and a competent local government. And that's what I'm after. I love this community. We need to move ahead. I've raised my kids here. I think I'm planning on them living here. I'm hoping they will. Who knows? But anyway, I think the future of this community is great, and I'm looking forward to this election. I think we can improve what we see now.
Thank you, Doug. Stacy?
You know, I think the city of Missoula is a fantastic place to work. I think the quality of the employees, several hundred of them, are just fantastic and responsive, and I think the city of Missoula does just a great job of responding to its citizens. For almost 100% of the time, I think. You know, it's easy to say that something isn't working, but I'd like to know exactly what that is that isn't working and viable solutions, because I really do think that it is working, and we have pretty thoughtful people in government. I think I'm one of those thoughtful folks. I chair the Administration and Finance Committee, and so I think I would have seen evidence of some broken down machine, and I haven't seen that. You know, I think most people in Missoula wake up and think life is pretty good here. I'm glad to be a part of that, and I'm pretty passionate about government for all, and life. You know, I think most people wake up and think everything's going pretty well here, and I'm really happy to be a part of that at the government level. Thanks.
Thank you. A comment from our chairperson of the board.
Actually, from the board of directors of the chamber and from the chamber membership, we really want to thank you for running for office. I mean, that kind of dedication to our community we need to applaud you for that. So thanks for being here. That's commendable. And continued along those same lines, we look for continued involvement and partnership with the chamber as a whole. We consider ourselves the heart of the community, and a vibrant chamber, a vibrant business committee is really, I think, the heart of a community. So we look for continued improvement, and we've set forth, I think, this last year or two, some really good directions and steps towards improving that partnership. So we thanks for being here. Thanks for running.
Thank you. Thank you.
I remind you, we have a rating form that assists us in evaluating these candidates on their outlook on the mission of the chamber. If you can complete that and drop off at the leave or get it back to the office within 1 week. Thank you very much.
There's a basket right at the back.
There's a basket, yeah, that will make it easier. Thank you.